Good morning, 6 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. This is liveweatherblogs.com meteorologist Bob Acarefrio with today's tropical update for Tuesday, October 12th, 2010. Well, we welcome Hurricane Paula to the scene this morning. At 5 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, we have maximum sustained winds of 75 miles an hour. We have movement to the northwest at 10. So here she is. Hurricane Paula developed, really started getting its act together yesterday here as it moved up just north of the Honduras border here. And now it's starting to lift off to the northwest. It's setting its sights on the Cancun Cozumel area. So if anybody has any travel plans out there for the next couple days, could be dealing with a hurricane here in a couple days. We have hurricane warnings across the Yucatan Peninsula here, and that does include the Cozumel and Cancun area. The official forecast track, this is kind of one of those tricky track systems here. It's going to kind of lift off to the northwest as a bit of a trough, a little shortwave trough is moving through the southern plain states currently, and it's going to induce this little bit of a northwest to north pull on this system as high pressure weakens here across the Caribbean. So we're going to have a little bit of a northwest to north turn. Now how close it gets to the Yucatan Peninsula, that's a little bit unsure right now. I believe it's going to stay just off the coast here. So that could continue some strengthening in the next 24 to 48 hours. And then from there, the forecast gets a little trickier. We've had some of the models, especially the GFDL model, taking the system, getting the system pretty strong here across the Northwest Caribbean. And then we're going to have another bigger trough sweep down across the Gulf Coast states towards the end of this week. And if this is going to clear out right through Florida and everything. And the GFDL says this is going to be strong enough to eject it off to the, I'll make this a little higher here, eject this off to the northeast, take it through the Florida Straits as a weakening system, which could bring some tropical storm conditions to the Keys and then through the Bahamas and out to sea. That's why you see how big this cone of uncertainty here is in the 5-day period. The rest of the models, though, kind of leave this down into the Caribbean as it comes up to the north here. What this trough is going to do as it sweeps down, it's going to bring in a lot of stronger westerly and southwesterly shears as you've seen over the last few weeks and drive down a lot of dry air again. So what's going to happen is this system's going to weaken and then just kind of get stuck down here or actually get tugged down to the south and eventually maybe weaken, maybe make another loop and come back. I mean, again, a lot of different scenarios in the long term, but the trend will be for weakening. After the next 24 to 48 hours, we will be in a weakening trend as that shear starts to come back down south and that drier air. So we will definitely be in a weakening trend nonetheless. But where it exactly goes is still a little unsure. No threat to the United States. Like I said, the Keys might could get some tropical storm conditions with this system if it does eject off to the northeast. I'm still seeing that scenario of this thing staying down here or even just weakening and eventually moving off to the south. I'm more with that scenario, especially seeing the strength of this trough that's going to be driving down. Looking at the satellite view this morning, you can actually see Paula was looking a little more healthier overnight, and then this morning it's actually starting to look not as healthy again, although hurricane hunters early this morning did find hurricane force winds. But again, not looking as healthy. It could be a lot to do with this drier air as it's moving northward. You know, we've had a lot of that continental dry air sink into the Caribbean the last couple weeks. And some of that dry air could be affecting it as this is moving north. We'll have to see. Again, waters are very warm in this area, and shear is kind of light right now. So you would expect this to strengthen a little bit as it heads up towards the Cozumel, Cancun area. So we'll have to see what kind of trend we have today with it. Again, right now, just not looking as healthy. Looking at the bigger picture, and you saw a lot of that continental dry air did sink all the way down, and that could be affecting some of that circulation this morning. Here's our first little trough here, a little short wave moving through the southern plains. This one is actually going to weaken. So, I mean, if we had this thing really digging south, this could have propelled it up to the north, and it could have been affecting the Gulf Coast, but that's not going to be the case. This is kind of bottoming out right now, and it's actually going to weaken. It's going to be this next driving trough that we're going to watch drive all the way down from Canada here. You can see it moving through the Rockies now. This is actually going to sweep all the way through and come all the way down into Florida by Friday. So this is going to just clear everything out again. and again bring a lot of drier air and shear down towards the Caribbean yet again. So we're not worried too much about this one. This isn't going to be the short wave that's going to pull this north and affect Florida or anything like that. It's not coming that way at all. This one's actually going to weaken as it's moving eastward, and it's going to be this next one that's going to dig down and actually could spin up a pretty potent nor'easter for the northeast over the weekend. We'll be watching for that as well. And here's the shear map this morning. You can see there's the higher shear up here. We're in lower shear right now, around 10 to 15 knots across our system. So shear looking good for the next 24 to 48 hours if you want strengthening with this system. But again, this higher shear values will start impeding to the south as we move through the week. And then by the end of the week, really stronger shear will be setting up again across the northwest Caribbean. And again, just touching on the steering currents this morning, and you can see here's that ridge here to its east, and that's what's steering it off to the northwest. Here's that little short wave moving through the southern plains. Again, not digging down. This isn't one of those that's going to dig all the way down and eject this up to the northeast. No, this is actually going to kind of flatten out and weaken as it moves east, and then we're going to wait for our next trough to dive down towards the end of the week here and just clear out the Gulf Coast states. And again, just touching on this is, again, pretty warm waters here. That's why we have to watch this system as it moves towards the Cancun, Cozumel area. Could still see some strengthening. Like I said, the only thing that could impede this is that drier air right now. We definitely have the warmer waters in this area, no doubt about it. Okay, model runs. Here's some of the early run models this morning. Again, most of them keeping this in that northwest Caribbean area and making kind of loops in here. Again, a few do eject it off to the northeast with that scenario. And like I said, the only way I could see that if Paula really deepens over the next 24 to 48 hours, then it could get picked up by that trough. And I'll show you that's what the GFDL is actually showing. So I just really don't see that happening. I see it still getting stuck down here in the northwest Caribbean. Again, intensity models this morning, you can see peaking in about 48 hours here as a Category 1 hurricane, and then you see the downward trend as that shear begins to affect it towards the weekend, towards the end of the week into the weekend. And here's that GFDL run, very consistent with this. Really the only model showing this right now, though. You can see it strengthening pretty quickly up here in the northwest Caribbean and then injects it off to the northeast as it gets hooked up with that big trough that's going to be. And you can see that big nor'easter that might develop across the northeast. So it kind of gets caught up in that. Again, this would bring tropical storm conditions possibly to the Keys. Still staying far enough away from South Florida. Shouldn't affect it too much, but this scenario would bring some rainfall again for South Florida. But this would be a weakening system as it moves off to the northeast. But then the HWRF keeps it down here in the Caribbean. This is kind of the scenario I'd be looking at. Little weaker system, gets close to Cancun, Cozumel, and then eventually just kind of sits there in the northwest Caribbean and slowly weakens as a lot of shear and dry air gets entangled with it. And here's the Euro model. This is for later on Saturday. Again, it's keeping it down here as a weak system. Doesn't get caught up in that trough and moves off to the northeast. Latest GFS, this is through Saturday here again. Just keeping a weaker system down here in the northwest Caribbean. And you could see that first short wave, as I was showing you, just kind of weakens. Then it waits for that next piece of energy to dive down here. And this is going to clear a front all the way through Florida. And again, it's going to really weaken our system with shear and drier air here in the northwest Caribbean. And last but not least, the UK Met model. Again, the same kind of scenario, just keeping it here in the northwest Caribbean and eventually weakening it. So you see, most of the scenarios do keep it in the northwest Caribbean. I really see that right now. I mean, if we see really rapid intensification here, or pretty good intensification over the next 24 to 48 hours, then we might see that eject off to the northeast across western Cuba, through the Florida Straits, and then through the Bahamas. But just not really seeing that with this system right now, especially with a lot of that drier air still in place. So I'm still looking for that scenario of keeping it here in the northwest Caribbean and eventually weakening it. But like I said, if you have any travel plans to Cancun, Cozumel the next couple days, keep a watch on Paula. Could have that little area to strengthen in the next 24 to 48 hours. So we'll have to watch that carefully for them. That's it for my tropical update today. I will have another update for you guys hopefully by tomorrow morning. Stay tuned to liveweatherblogs.com for your latest weather information. Have a good day.